My students often ask me, how do I shade my kawaii drawings? How do I shade my anime and manga illustrations? How do I shade in color pencil? How do I shade in Procreate? And that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? My answer is pretty much always the same. You've got to learn how to shade the basic shapes. In fact, this has been asked so often that I decided to make a 4-part video series on how to shade basic shapes in pencil and in Procreate using digital art. And in this video, we'll jump into part 1, how to shade a sphere. It'll be a step-by-step tutorial, really simple. It's perfect for beginners if that's where you are. And it will be insightful for experienced drawers because it'll show you those foundational skills which you can never have enough of. If you're new here, a warm welcome. My name is Tatiana Denis, and on this channel I share step-by-step tutorials on how to draw kawaii and how to monetize your art using print-on-demand services. If this is interesting to you, then I invite you to subscribe to my channel using that subscribe button below the video. And I've got a free mini course, which you can grab right here. Today's tutorial on how to shade a sphere will include a demonstration on how to do it using pencil, just regular lead, and how to do it on the iPad. So I'm holding up an Apple Pencil here. And I want to give you a disclaimer right away. We are not going to be shading the object to perfection. We are not creating a still life that we're going to be entering into an art competition. I want to give you the information that you need to know in order to apply shading to your kawaii art without getting overwhelmed and without getting too technical. So if you're ready to jump in, get the paper and pen or Procreate, whatever you want to use. First, I'm going to do it in pencil, then I'm going to do it in Procreate, and let's get some drawing done. The materials I've got for shading the sphere is just a basic drawing pad. It's called cartridge paper. It's basically like a thick drawing paper, but not too thick. It's pretty basic. And I'll also be using a 2B pencil with a ridiculously long lead. I don't like to stop to sharpen it, so I just sharpen it really long ahead of time. So ignore that part. And then I've also got this magic ball. It's a styrofoam sphere, and I'll pop the links to all of these things below the video. So it's a styrofoam ball from a craft store, but what I did is I drew bands with a Sharpie marker on, the different concentric circles, and it divides it in half and it divides it, into halves again, so it makes up quarters. And I use this ball to demonstrate the shading and how the light travels and how it drops off and how, why does the shading start here? Why is this called the Terminator? So this is what I'm telling you, that I will not be bugging you down with all of the details because this is how I like to teach. I like to show you practical things, practical skills that you can apply to your drawings right away. So using a sphere like this, imagine how much it will shortcut your learning process and your drawing process, because this thing literally cost maybe $2 and it took me 3 minutes to draw the circles, and I use it all the time, even for myself when shading. And having the understanding of this in my head really helps me. And I use it as a drawing aid in my tutorials at the Kawaii Drawing Club. Whenever I explain concepts, I use this as a demonstration. Okay, so that's the props. And then I've got 2 types of erasers, just a basic plastic eraser. And I've got this stretchy one called a kneaded eraser. And you'll see it's gonna come in really handy for lifting out some of the lead if we go too dark. And then I've got some candy balls for inspiration. Okay, let's start drawing. I'm just gonna draw a circle. In fact, you know what? I'm gonna use my candy ball thing to create a somewhat of a circle. It really doesn't need to be perfect. We wanna understand the concepts here. So use whatever tool that you have to create a circle, and don't try to make it perfect, that's fine. Now, when you are shading, everything already has some kind of a color and is receiving always light and shadow. And even though the ball, let's say we're shading this ball, even though this ball is white, it's not actually truly white, right? It's more like grayish. If we were to call something white, and if we imagine that the light is coming from here, imagine that the pencil is the light and this is the sun, and it's sort of beaming down this way. And something that you've got to remember about how the light travels, this will apply to any type of shading of any shape, is that light always travels in a straight line. It doesn't ever bend around the shape, which makes it so convenient because all you've got to do is visualize the light traveling this way and it hits the ball and then it kind of passes through this edge, right? Conveniently, we have a line right here. And this is where the light will actually go past the ball and this will become a shadow. You see how simple this is? Just visualize this half moon shape. Believe me, this all has a point. And that's your shadow area. Very, very, very simple. We've established that everything has a light, a color to it, or not a color, but a shade. So let's just go ahead and start by shading the entire sphere or the entire circle with some kind of a, what we call a mid-tone. It's not light, it's not dark, it's just some kind of a tone so that we're not working with white, because nothing is really white. And now I'm going to take another shortcut, and I just have a tissue and I'm going to smooth it out. I could, sit here and shade it to perfection, or I can just take a shortcut. And if I made any boo-boos, I can just rub it out like this. Now, we talked about the fact that, there will be a piece of highlight right here where the light hits it directly. It doesn't, it doesn't actually fall off. It just like, boom, hits it. So let's indicate that on our drawing. We'll just say roughly right here is the highlight. So you can imagine the sphere that we're drawing. If we were to draw this, the styrofoam sphere, it's kind of like this, and then it has this other circle and this other circle, and then maybe we see a little bit at the bottom. That's pretty much what it is. So keep that in mind as we are doing the demo. Okay, that's, let's call it the highlight. And then we said that this side is all in the shadow, right? Because the light has passed it, and this is all shadow, and this is all mid-tone. So let's indicate it right here. I'm just gonna lightly sketch in a slightly darker shade within the same framework. And then do my shortcut again, smudge it out a little bit. And it's kind of starting to look more round, but we are definitely not there yet. We're just putting in the foundations. So we want to bring up the contrast. We want to make dark things way darker so that the light can actually stand out. You can hardly see this white right here. And in life, the shadow doesn't just stop, right? The light gradually hits it here, then here, then here, then it gets to the shadow, and then it goes darker. But in general, this side, this entire side, will always be darker than this side because it's only a reflection of the light and not the light itself. So that's what I'm communicating right here. And I'm also going to add a shadow because if the light is coming this way, then it gets blocked by the ball and there's going to be, what we call a cast shadow. And cast shadow is your best friend in shading because it really, really helps to anchor the shape. And the cast shadow will be pretty dark. It will be like really dark. The darkest point is right here, right below the ball where there's nothing, and it doesn't have fuzzy edges. A cast shadow is usually pretty hard edged, which again is easy to draw and really helps to position the object on the ground. I call it the best friend. So now have a look at this drawing. You'll notice that the edge that I'm leaving here is not as dark as this band right here, right? And I can definitely make it even darker still. And this is the case for the kneaded eraser. I feel like my shadow has crept up way too high, so I'm just gonna slightly pull it out. Just dab, 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 pull out the extras, bring back that shadow, go back to your place, and then just cover up the cover up the oopsies. Now with the smudging, you've got to be really careful. It is actually frowned upon in art school. When I was a student at Julian Ashton, we were not almost allowed to smudge because they say that smudging covers up the mistakes, and you should just get it right in the first place. And I kind of agree. The thing is, it takes a long time to get it right away. So my belief is that smudging is okay as long as you know what you're doing, right? As long as you sort of draw with understanding and use smudging as a shortcut and not a cover-up for your mistakes. Another little trick is that you can take a clean piece of tissue and just rub it out also. That's like a way to lift out a little bit of the pigment or lead. And now I'm gonna sort of shade it a little bit lighter, a little bit darker here to just make it a little bit more rounded and make this highlight stand out a bit more. Okay, so you will see that the edge of the sphere, right where the shadow ends, is not as dark as the shadow area. And that's not a mistake. That actually makes the ball look even more round. This is something called reflected light, because as our sphere sits on the table, there is white paper, and I've got a studio light right here shining onto the paper. The light travels here, boom, then it reflects off the paper and back into the bowl. So even though there's a really strong light on this side giving us that highlight and mid-tone and the shadow, there is also a little bit of light bouncing up from the page onto the bowl. So this whole side will actually receive a bit of light, and this is called reflected light. Look, I don't want to get bogged down in technical terms. All you really got to remember that there is the place where the light really hits this sphere. Then there is a section of mid-tone, like where it gets gradually darker until it gets to the shadow part where the light no longer can hit the ball, and then it goes really dark. So that's what we have here. Highlight, the mid-tone area, and then the whole shadow area, and then a little bit lighter reflected light, and then the cast shadow, which is your dark piece. But something like this is often a mistake. People get it wrong. They make this too light. In real world, right? We're not talking illustration here, but in real world, the reflected light would never be as light as this part. It always has to be darker than this part, because reflected light can never be as strong as the original light source. It is a reflection. The way that I remember this from art school is my teacher said the moon would never be as bright as the sun, because the moon is a reflection of the sun. So I hope this helps you to remember as well. And because this side is surrounded by a dark cast shadow and a dark, what is called core shadow area, this looks like it's light, but actually if you were to compare this tone with this tone, this is way darker. So this is something to look out for, is to not make your reflected light too light. Okay, we've shaded the sphere in pencil. Now let's jump into Procreate and shade it digitally, and you'll see it's going to be so easy now that you understand the principles of how to shade a sphere. Okay, let's open Procreate, and here I've just got a blank canvas. screen size so that I can show you. And I've got my handy dandy drawing glove in pink. I'll pop a link to where you can get a pink colorful glove yourself. They've got different colors. So anyway, let's start drawing a sphere here, and it's going to be so easy and fast. You're not going to believe yourself. So, but bear with me. I will show you all the steps in Procreate so that you can repeat the steps yourself. So I'm going to grab a color. I have this palette called Monochrome, and what it is a black and white, and then a 50% gray, and then in between, right? Just like we were talking about our helper ball, right? I have these pre-mixed colors, you can say, which I often use as a starting point. So I'm just grabbing like a light-ish gray, and I'm going to be using regular monoline brush, and I'm going to draw a circle. And if I hold the pencil, it'll auto-complete the shape. And if I put my finger on the canvas, it'll turn it into an actual perfect circle. Let's say it like this. And I'm going to pick the color and drag it in to fill the shape. Next step, let's draw our highlight just like we did it in pencil, but I'm going to draw it on a new layer. So I hit this little plus sign. This is your layers menu right here at the top, and I hit a plus sign. So I'm going to grab a white color this time, just white, and I'm going to draw a little oval, and it's going to be bigger than the actual highlight area, because you'll see why. We're going to be using digital magic and lots of shortcuts so that you can do it super quickly. And the oval doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't even have to be super smooth. We're just gonna, put it in. You'll see why. The next color I'm gonna grab is this dark shadow, like this. And I'm gonna draw that portion where the light no longer hits the ball and just gets past. So it's kind of like this, right? Just like we saw on the ball. Something like this. And then I'm not going to go all the way to the edge because we know that there is reflected light, and we're just going to draw this half moon shape. Doesn't need to be perfect, doesn't need to be smooth. It's going to work. So I'm going to clean up the edges a little bit, and we're good to go. Now, if the shape is not right, you can change it up. So you can grab your selection tool right here. You can circle the part that you want to edit, and then just press the arrow, and then you can rotate it, you can move it around, you can resize it, very easy and very fail proof. So now is the magical part. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use Gaussian blur filter in Procreate. So what that's gonna do is make everything fuzzy, and it's under this adjustments menu, and then Gaussian blur right here. Gaussian blur, and I drag my finger, and everything here gets smoothed out. Is this starting to look a little bit familiar to our drawing? There's the ball. How easy was that? How easy was that? We're not 100% done. We've got some cleanup to do. Do you see our shadow is actually spilling over? So in Procreate, there's a feature called clipping mask, which means the top layer will not go beyond the layer below it. So I'm going to tap it, and I'm going to say clipping mask, and it just cleaned up the edge for me. You see? So this is without the clipping mask. There's like a halo around it. And this is with clipping mask. Boom. And let's just do that, the best friend of shading, the cast shadow. Let's put that in as well. Now, if you're going to be using color drop, you've got to close the shape. So that's why I went through and made sure that the shape is closed. Otherwise, it'll go everywhere. But that's the cast shadow. And maybe the shape is not 100% right, but it's okay, These things you can finesse. But it's mostly correct. And the only thing that I would do to finish it off, like I can say this is done, but I can also add another little bit of highlight right at the top just to make it stronger, like even stronger. And I can use a soft brush for that. So all of these brushes are free and come with Procreate. So I've used monoline so far, and I'm using soft brush. And I'm gonna grab white again, and I'm just gonna put a little bit more of highlight here. Maybe bigger brush, just a little more highlight. Voila, we've got a shaded sphere. Easy peasy, right? Now you know how to shade a sphere by using a pencil, and you know how to shade a sphere in Procreate. Let's look at a real life example. Here you see two cartoon characters. This is a very cute Russian cartoon called Малышарики, which my children love to watch. You can see that the basic shape of the characters are balls, right? Are spheres. And now if you are faced with drawing this type of character in Kawaii, you will know where to put your shadows and where to put your highlights. And most importantly, you will know why. And that's the ultimate power. This understanding of why the highlights and shadows go in specific places will enable you to shade in any medium, whether you're using paints, whether you're using colored pencils, whether you're drawing digitally in Procreate, the principles are exactly the same. And no matter what style of art you're shading, so you can do that realistic smooth transitions like I showed you, and like that cartoon image that I showed you. Or you can do more of a manga style where the shadow just cuts off, right? But now you understand where to actually place your shadow and the highlight. If you were following along with the video and you shaded a sphere with me, high fives! And don't just stop there, continue to shade spheres until the next video comes out where we will see how to shade a cube. But continue practicing so that you get better. That's the only way to get better. There is no secret. It's practice and then correcting along the way. And if you're at the Kawaii Drawing Club, if you're a member, then share your spheres in a community so that I can give you feedback and you can keep improving. And if you're not at the Kawaii Drawing Club, then check it out. The link is in the description below. We are a community of supportive Kawaii artists where we draw together. Every month we have a full tutorial. We do live Q&As. We talk about how to monetize your art with print on demand. And we also hang out and do a drawing date together. So the link is in the description below. Check it out. My main goal for you is that you make progress. So wherever you are in your drawing journey, I fully support you. And I invite you to really embrace your creative power and potential. Keep practicing, keep sharing, and I will see you in the next video.